Besath halle I hwa swa swa wheelum side don mine eldan eldran. DayVeeJay here, and it's that time of the year again when we look back on the highs and the lows, the good times and the bad, the shining gems and the steaming piles of shit. That's right, it's time for Tier List 2 Electric Boogaloo, where I sum up my thoughts on all the games I reviewed in the year of our Lord 2024. And yeah, without further delay, let's just get straight into it. Alright, I've got my trusty old tier list open with all the games we looked at the year before last. We've got last year's games down here, and I think we'll just go in alphabetical order again, which should give us a good mix of grades. And since technically they start with numbers, it looks like we're starting with the PS2 Bond games. And I was thinking for these, it'd probably be better if I made a separate tier list for the PS2 games. Just cause I think it's kind of unfair to compare PS2 games with PS1 games. Like, of course they're gonna be better. I know that's not always the case, but for the most part, yeah, PS2 is superior to PS1, so that's what we're gonna do. And since we're going alphabetically, first up we've got 007 Agent Under Fire. Rather appropriate considering this was the first PS2 game I ever played. And like I said in my review, I remember just being completely blown away the first time I played this. I'd never seen anything like it before in my whole life, and it was at that point where my obsession with gaming truly began. I've pestered my poor old mother for months for a PlayStation 2, and she has this game to thank for that. And looking back on it now, yeah, I think it holds up pretty well. It's fast paced and fun, it controls a lot better than the PS1 games, the driving missions are good, they control really well. I'm actually a little disappointed there weren't more. The graphics are good, and of course it has the excellent bouncing booby physics, so yeah, A+. Yeah, I'm just kidding. It's good, but it's not that good. It does get a bit samey and repetitive as you get into the later levels. The gadgets can be a bit annoying with the way the buttons are set up and shit. The story and characters, particularly the villains, are pretty generic to the point that even though it's still got a lot of the Bond trappings like some of the same characters, the soundtrack, our favourite secret agent being a lecherous perv, etc., it feels more like just a generic FPS with just the Bond license to set it apart from all the other generic FPSs that were around back then. But despite that, it was still decent enough. I had a lot of fun with it, so I think we'll go with a B. Oh, and just as an aside, I recently went back and watched all the Bond films back to back because they all appeared on Prime. Some of them I hadn't seen in years, and yeah, I forgot just how big a fucking lech the guy actually is. I also have a much greater appreciation for Timothy Dalton's Bond now. I didn't really care much for him as a kid, but now, I think he's probably one of the better ones, actually. But anyway, next up we've got Nightfire. Yeah, I know alphabetically, everything or nothing should come next, but since we're just looking at these ones, might as well go chronologically, and it's my list, so fuck it. But yeah, Agent Under Fire was cool. I remember liking that game a lot, but Nightfire was something else. This was our COD before we had COD. We were obsessed with this game. And it's not hard to see why. This one just felt more like an authentic Bond adventure instead of just a generic action game that just happened to be a Bond game as well. The combat's a bit deeper and more exhilarating. There's a bit more strategy to it this time, and a few more options. I liked how each weapon had multiple fire modes and shit, although the movement and aiming did feel a bit more clunky. The gameplay is a bit more varied and interesting. There's a few bits where you can choose how you want to approach your objective, although I was disappointed that these are just confined to a few specific parts and aren't throughout the whole game. The graphics are better and more realistic, although they didn't give us the bouncing boobies this time, so yeah, F. Nah, I'm just joking again. The story is pretty thin and the characters are all fairly one-dimensional, and of course we've got the ridiculous voices that sound absolutely nothing like the characters they're portraying, which was kind of distracting, especially when you've got the pretty decent likeness of Pierce Brosnan, but with a voice that clearly isn't his coming out of his fucking mouth. And I don't think I mentioned it in the video, but I find it pretty funny that on the box they actually say, oh, an all-new storyline featuring Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. And it's like, no, it doesn't feature Pierce Brosnan as James Bond, you liars. It features the likeness of Pierce Brosnan. He's not actually playing the fucking character, is he? That's like if in, like, fucking Jedi Academy, they're like, oh, it's Mark Hamill playing Luke Skywalker, when it isn't, it's just his face. Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. But overall, Nightfire is a great game, and it holds up pretty well. I had a good time revisiting it. I don't think it's quite good enough for an A. It might have been if they went further with giving you multiple ways to tackle objectives. but as it stands, I think it's worth a strong B+. And while we're at it, since I did take a look at it as well, why don't we grade the PC version, since it is a completely different game made by a different developer, and well, it's different, I'll give it that. Yeah, overall, I don't think it's as good as the console version. It had some good ideas, like when you're going through the astronaut training bit, but then it had some absolute god-awful bullshit ideas, like dragging out levels to sometimes extreme lengths to make up for the lack of vehicle missions, and this absolute wank-brained horse shit. I've still got no idea what they were playing at with that. Yeah, it was fun, it was entertaining, but it just wasn't as good. So I think we'll knock it down to a C for the PC version. And then finally we have Everything or Nothing, arguably the last great Bond game. I did play a few of the ones that came after, like GoldenEye, Rogue Agent and From Russia with Love, which yeah, we'll get to that one at some point. But yeah, I don't remember them being as good, or any of the subsequent games being as well received. But anyway, Everything or Nothing. Pierce Brosnan's final outing as our favourite secret agent. Yeah, we've actually got the voice to match the face this time. And that was probably the most notable thing about this one. The amount of big names they got to portray the characters, including the likes of Judi Dench, Willem Dafoe and John Cleese. Which, like I said in my review, I'm not really sure why they even bothered. I mean, they all did a fine enough job, fine being the operative word. They're mostly just kind of phoning it in. And to be honest, it probably would have been just as good if they got some actual voice actors to do the job. But aside from that, the game is really good. I had a lot of fun with it. The third-person perspective worked well and helps you feel a bit more connected with Bond, even though personally I would have preferred first-person. And the gameplay is more interesting since you've got a wider range of wacky gadgets like the spider bots and invisibility cloak and shit, and there's more opportunities to choose how you want to approach objectives, which is cool. The gunplay could be a bit clumsy and clunky, but it wasn't too bad and didn't drag the game down all that far, although there were a few daft missions that served no point other than just to drag the story out, even though it was already pretty long to begin with. Again, I don't think it's quite good enough for an A, and I personally didn't enjoy it quite as much as Nightfire, but it's still a great time, so again, I think we'll go with a B. And now we're heading back over to PS1, and first up we've got Action Man Destruction X, the sequel to Operation Extreme, what we looked at last year, which as you can see didn't end up doing so well. I mean, I ended up giving it a C- or something. Yeah, it had some fun moments, but for the most part it was just boring and annoying. It didn't hold up anywhere near as well as what I remember as a kid. I mean, in the end it was pretty much just a giant toy advert. And what about the sequel? Well, again, it's different, I'll give it that. Basically, rather than try to improve the boring and long ass on foot missions, they just ripped them out completely and replaced them with more driving missions, which mostly consist of either races that have nothing to do with the story, or a few simple objectives and mini-games repeated throughout the whole game, like the firefighting bit or using your tracking thing to drive around and find the bad guys so you can blow them up. They do throw in the odd curveball every once in a while, like the one where you're driving the truck with the brakes cut, or where you're herding zoo animals through the streets. Yeah, that was pretty funny. But they're few and far between. The driving controls are better than the first one, but they're still not great. They're still really clunky, so you still crash into shit like every 5 fucking seconds. Honestly, the most fun I had was just fucking around, pretending I'm in GTA for kids, blowing up cars, trying to run people over, etc. But aside from that, like its predecessor, it was just pretty boring and forgettable. Although I do appreciate that this one seems much more like it's trying to be a game first, instead of just a glorified toy commercial. But yeah, I think we'll go with another C-, put it with its big brother. It wasn't terrible, but it sure wasn't great either. The next up we've got, speaking of not great, what have we here? Yes, I think we all know where this one's going. Hey Independence Day, look, I've got a playmate for you, so you don't have to be on your own now. Yeah, you two can keep each other company. Play nice now, don't be fighting over who's the bigger load of shite. But yeah, I hated this game. I absolutely despised this game, and I never want to play it ever again for as long as I live. But you know what? When I first started playing, I was actually pretty excited. Yeah, I knew it was going to be bad pretty much as soon as I started moving around, but I thought it was just going to be like funny bad. I was like, oh my god, this is going to be hilarious. I thought I'd struck gold, but then I got a bit further in, and no, it wasn't hilarious. It was just painful. Very, very, very painful. So this game's biggest sin, I think, is its ambition. You can tell they really wanted to do something big and groundbreaking, instead of just making the bog standard action beat 'em up platformer it should have been. Too bad they didn't have the talent to pull it off. So yeah, we've got shit like this great big, mostly empty open world, which is admittedly impressive for the time, finding and analysing clues to figure out where to go next, a Dead Rising style clock system where shit doesn't happen until a certain time, and if you miss it, it's gone forever, and different gameplay modes cause there weren't enough buttons for all the combat moves. And it's just, why do we need all this shit in fucking Batman and Robin of all things? I mean, like I said, that's all it needed to be. Just a daft little action adventure where you go around beating up a few guys and doing a bit of platforming. That's it. But even if they did just that, it still would have been a piece of shit, considering they managed to fuck up even the bare essentials. The movements shit, the combat's shit, the AI's shit, the camera's shit, the level design shit. Everything about this game's just shit. I hate it. It's so bad I couldn't even finish the fucking thing. And it was only like the first mission that I actually managed to get past. And every time I'd be like, it can't be this bad. I must be doing something wrong. So I would start the game again to try and find another way through. But every time I would pretty much just come to the same fucking brick wall. I even tried using fucking guides and it didn't work. So yeah, this seriously has to be the worst game I've ever played. I mean, yeah, I've played shit like fucking Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Ghostbusters on NES and Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, but I knew they were shit because I saw them on AVGN. That's why I fucking played them. But with this, I mean, I wasn't expecting it to be great. I mean, it's just some stupid little movie tie-in, but I never expected it to be this fucking bad. Out of all the games I've played for doing this shit, all the ones I didn't like, which we'll get to soon enough, I'd play any of those again before I play this shit again. I won't do it. You can't make me. And, yeah. Basically, it's not very good. Then next, it's Bugs and Taz Time Busters, the sequel to Bugs Bunny Lost in Time. First game I ever played. I remember playing it back in the day, but I don't think I ever finished it, nor do I remember liking it as much. And having played it again all these years later, yeah, it's decent enough, I guess. But I still didn't really like it as much as its predecessor. It's cool that we get to play as both Bugs and Taz, and they both have their own specific abilities, but I didn't find the more puzzle-focused gameplay to just be as fun or engaging as the more platforming-oriented gameplay in the first one. Some of the mini-games were kind of fun, but they were also pretty repetitive, and it had the same sense of humour, but it didn't seem quite as funny as Lost in Time either. Yeah, it's hard to think of much to say. It's fine enough, you'll probably have a good time with it, but I just didn't find it as fun or memorable as the first one. So yeah, even though I gave Lost in Time a B+, which looking back on it now was probably a bit generous, I think I'll bust this one back to a C+. Then next up, we've got the first outing for our little lovable genetically engineered marsupial, Crash Bandicoot. And yeah, it's pretty good. It is a bit bare bones, what with it being the first one in the series. You don't have many abilities, and there's only a few types of levels, like, I don't know, the normal on foot ones, the boulder ones, and the ones where you're riding on the poor piggy or whatever. But they're varied enough that the game never seems too repetitive. Of course, you've got the fucking difficulty, which did get pretty ridiculous at times, and then you've got that brain-dead fucking save system where you can only save after beating a bonus level, or after 100% in a normal level without fucking dying once. I still can't fathom how anyone thought that was a good fucking idea. And it's not as if it made the game more challenging either. No, it just made it more fucking annoying. So yeah, that, on top of the fact it didn't really do anything new or innovative, does drag it down. But the stuff it does do, it does well enough for the most part, so not far. I think it's worth a B-. Then next we've got Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back, which I think addressed pretty much every problem I had with the first one. The gameplay was more varied, you had more abilities, they fixed the bonus levels so you didn't only have one chance to do them, they got rid of the stupid fucking save system which, guess what, didn't make the game all that easier, but it made it a hell of a lot more tolerable to play through. It isn't quite as difficult as the first one, at least for maybe the first 2/3. There were still some annoying as fuck bits in the later levels. It still doesn't really push the boat out in terms of creativity. I don't think it does anything that you didn't see in other games from the time. But again, the stuff it does really well. It's a lot of fun, it's definitely better than the first one, but I still don't think it's quite good enough for an A, so I think we'll give it a B+. Then finally, we've got Crash 3, or Crash Bandicoot Warped, which many consider to be the best of the original trilogy. Although to be honest, personally I enjoy Crash 2 just that little bit more. This one's definitely a lot more varied because you've got the new abilities and the new level types like the racers and the plane ones and shit. But I just thought Crash 2 was a little better designed, and it controlled a bit better too if I remember correctly. Like for some reason the controls felt a little bit looser and more clunky. I don't know why. It was definitely the easiest of the three, although there were still plenty bits that made me want to throw the controller out the fucking window. It was a lot of fun, just not quite as good as Crash 2, so I'll give it a B. And then, we've got another sequel to a game we looked at last year. And what a fucking game it was. I get fucking Nam flashbacks from the first Croc. I remember how I was before I played that game. I was a sweet summer child. Afterwards, I don't know. I'm hesitant to say I was then a man, since I don't really feel like one most of the time as it is. But I wasn't the same. It changed me, I know that much. I had no idea what I was going into with that one, but I was a bit older and wiser this time. And yeah, it was about everything I was expecting, about as hard and annoying as its predecessor. But despite that, it is better. The controls are way better even though they're still pretty awkward and clunky, and the gameplay is a lot more varied. I did have fun at the times when I wasn't wanting to bash my head against the wall, and Croc's just as charming and lovable as ever. It was better than the first one, but not by much. I don't know, I gave that one a C last time, so I guess I'll be kind and knock this one up to a C+. And next up we have Driver. Another game that made me want to ram my head through a plate glass window. We had quite a few of those last year, didn't we? Yeah, I knew this one was gonna be painful. I mean, I always knew about the parking garage bit, but I didn't know how painful it was gonna be, because as it turns out, it wasn't just the garage, it was the whole entire fucking game! Which I'm not really sure what more you can expect given its premise and gameplay. Driving around the city, committing crimes and avoiding the cops who'll chase you if they catch you speeding or running a red light or whatever. So you've got to drive normally, but then you've usually got a time limit which is really tight, so you've got no choice but to tear ass it through the city. But then you've got cops appearing pretty much out of nowhere, and because of the limitations of the graphics, a lot of the time they'll just pop in before you've got a chance to react. They see you and then the fuckers chase you all over the shop. Then you've got to break more laws to escape from them, which makes more of the bastards come after you, and then they just smash you all over until your car's fucked and you fail. Rinse and repeat. Yeah, it might not be like that for the whole game, but there were definitely a few missions that played out like that, and Jesus Christ, the final mission was just fucking ridiculous. I've got no fucking clue how you're meant to do that shit without cheating. And yeah, it was impressive for the time, with them having made like, what, 4 cities or something, and they're pretty well detailed. But gameplay wise, I just found it tedious and annoying for the most part. Most of the missions are really just the same. Drive here, pick this up or these guys up or whatever, then escape from the cops. There were really only a few that actually felt unique, like the one where you're smashing your car through the pizza parlors. The story and dialogue and shit, which is obviously influenced by all the old 70s car chase flicks, just comes across as really archaic and laughable now. I just didn't have a good time with this one at all. I mean, it has its place, it's ambitious, some aspects of it were impressive. I don't think it's bad enough for a D, as much as I might want to give it one. So yeah, I think we'll go with the C-. The next up, and speaking of cops, we've got Future Cop, LAPD. And first off, I'll let you in on a little secret. Out of all the reviews I've done, this is probably my least favourite. Not the game itself, Lord no, just my video on it. I don't think it was a bad video, I wouldn't have uploaded it if I did. I just think it could have been a bit better, like I could have put a bit more effort into thinking of things to say. Like as one commenter pointed out, I didn't do justice to the multiplayer, and by the sounds of it, I actually missed out on a few interesting things to talk about. But hey ho, not much I can do about it now. It was a difficult video to write, probably because the game is just that good. Yeah, it's always the good games that are harder to write for, because it's just harder to find things to talk about. But anyway, I fucking love this game. If there was ever a game that needed a remake, it's this one. This game was a total blast, literally. I mean, what could be more fun than jumping in a great big mech thing and just going around slaughtering motherfuckers with machine guns and rockets and flamethrowers and shit? What's not to love? I mean, it could be a little annoying at times, what with the lack of checkpoints and shit, and it doesn't really do anything groundbreaking, and it does start to get a bit stale towards the end. But the movement's good, the combat's fucking class, I love the soundtrack, and the art style's great. It's pretty crazy how good it is when you consider it was made by EA. Like, yeah, there was actually a time when EA made good games. Yeah, who'd have thought? I don't think I can give it a full A, cause I think you really need to do something innovative for that. But I will give it an A-, cause I just like it that much. Then next we've got, probably my most controversial review, judging by the likes to dislike ratio. And it was still received well, but I did notice that it got a few more dislikes than usual, probably from people who disagreed with my assessment of GoldenEye 007, which is fine, I'm not bothered. I know a lot of people love this game, as do I just don't think it's aged all that gracefully, and it also has some design choices that were pretty dumb even for back then. It was definitely impressive for its time, it was fun, the combat and movement's decent, even if the precision aim's pretty shit. If you're gonna play it now after playing a ton of newer shooters, you've really gotta let go of all that shit, because if you don't, you're probably not gonna have a good time. I really don't agree when people say this is the greatest shooter of all time, or the greatest Bond game of all time, or whatever. It might have been when it came out, but I think if a game is truly great, then it should be timeless. It should be just as good now as when it first came out, or near enough. And I just don't think it was as good as I remember it being back then. It was more of a ball ache than anything else. Fucking Italian man, motherfucker. But I do acknowledge its impact on the genre and how influential it was, and you've still got to appreciate it for that, if nothing else. I'll give it a C+, which I'll still probably get shit for, but that's as far as I'm willing to go to bat for it. And then we've got, oh yeah, the birthplace of the legend itself, Grand Theft Auto. Too bad it's a piece of shit. Yeah, like I said in the video, it's a good thing they made GTA 3, because if they stuck with this shit, well, let's just say the games industry will be a whole lot different today. Yeah, I hated this game. Pretty much every second I spent playing it was just an exercise in tedium and rage. This is another one I ended up giving up on after starting and restarting it over and over again. Because I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Just not giving you an in-game map and expecting you to sit there with a fucking physical map across your knees while you're playing the fucking game to know where you're going. Who thought that would be fun? But on top of that, the driving's not very good, doesn't handle very well, the combat's just a total lost cause to the point where I would go out of my way to avoid it as much as possible. The fact you can't save the game except for when you beat one of these long ass fucking levels, so you've got to beat them in one fucking go. Just, yeah, this wasn't fun whatsoever. I don't think it's bad enough to give it an F, but it's not much better. I'm giving it a D-. That's mostly just cause it was the beginning of one of the greatest gaming series of all time. And that's it. Then next we've got, My Life the Game, pretty much. Yep, it's The Grinch, my most recent review. And yeah, it was pretty good. It was made by the same people who did Bugs Bunny Lost in Time, Bugs and Taz, and Monsters Inc. And like I said in the video, it's pretty impressive how they managed to tailor each of these games to the individual IP they're part of. I mean, they are essentially all just the same game, they're just these little platformer collecting things. But they do take the time to set them apart from each other by having gameplay elements that are unique to the individual character. Like this time you've got the Grinch's bullshit meter, and the gameplay mostly revolves around playing pranks on the Who. I really appreciate that, because they could have easily just made it a bog standard platformer with nothing to set it apart. So yeah, it is a decent game. It is the hardest out of all these ones that I've played. Like I say in the video, there's loads of bits where it doesn't really help you at all and you've just got to figure things out for yourself. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, that's a common complaint you hear with modern games, where they'll often just spell out exactly what you're supposed to do, rather than make you have to stop and think about it for a little bit. But then you've also got the fucking bullshit swinging thing, which was way more annoying than it should have been, where you've got to fucking press the button at the exact right moment to swing forward or up, and you've got to be swinging to turn yourself around and shit, and I couldn't figure it out to the point that I had to look up a fucking walkthrough to see how to swing on a pole in the fucking Grinch, for fuck's sake. But aside from that, it's fun enough, although it doesn't really do anything innovative, and it is still pretty standard. I don't think it's good enough for a B, but I'll give it a C+. And next we're heading back over to PS2 for Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb, which I obviously did to coincide with the release of The Great Circle. Yeah, fat lot of good that did, but never mind that. So yeah, Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb. I remember enjoying this one a lot as a kid. Like I said in the video, I originally had it on PC, but I couldn't get the PC version to work for the review, so I ended up doing the PS2 version instead. But they're both the same as far as I can tell. I didn't mention it in the video, but this is kind of like Uncharted before Uncharted, or at least that's what it seemed like to me, going around ancient ruins, beating up bad guys, finding artifacts and shit. And for the most part, yeah, it's decent. The platform's good, so is the combat, at least the unarmed and melee. The shooting's a bit clunky, but it's serviceable enough. It does start to get a bit repetitive as you get into the second half, and the gameplay doesn't really evolve all that much, at least until near the end when you get the boomerang thing in the mirror. Some of the boss fights are kind of fun, and I like how strange and batshit some of the places you go are. Like you've got the crazy castle with traps like what fucking Jigsaw would come up with, then you fight fucking Frankenstein's monster or some shit, then the Kraken, and then you end up fighting zombies in the fucking netherworld. Yeah, it does go a bit overboard, but it keeps it entertaining. But then you've got that stupid fucking cart chase where you're going along in some little cart thing with the bad guys chasing you like 2 miles an hour or something. Yeah, that was just fucking hilarious. But yeah, I did like it for the most part. It feels like an authentic Indiana Jones adventure. Although again, it doesn't do anything really groundbreaking or unique. I think it's worth a beat. And then it's back over to PS1 with Medieval, which if nothing else at least held up better than the previous few pieces of shit I looked at. I never got to play this one back in the day, which I'm honestly surprised by, because this seems like the kind of thing I would have played when I was little, but whatever, it was decent enough. It has a lot of charm, which like I say in the video is probably the biggest reason why it's so well remembered. The gameplay is a bit clunky, the movement and camera could be a pain, and the combat's pretty by the numbers, although the level design's pretty good. I felt like each level at least had some unique aspect to it, which helps keep things from becoming repetitive. I love the world and the atmosphere and its sense of humour. If you haven't played it, I recommend you give it a go. It's not groundbreaking or innovative or anything, but it's enjoyable enough. I think I'll give it a C+. Then next we've got Men in Black, the series Crashdown or some shit. Yeah, I'd never heard of this one, but it came as a recommendation, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, what the fuck is that? I've got to take a look at that. Because I remember liking the series quite a bit as a kid, and then I was like, yeah, I've got to do a review of this. But apart from that, there's nothing really special about it. It's just a bog standard shooter with the Men in Black license. It played well enough, although it does get pretty repetitive and it does lose its appeal the further you go. It is a pretty nothing game when you think about it. It did have a couple cool details from the MIB universe, like the noisy cricket and the neuralizer and shit, but they weren't enough to set the game apart from any of the other FPSs what were around back then. Yeah, I'm not really sure what else to say. I'll give it a C. And then we've got Monsters Inc., another game from our friends at A2M. And yeah, it's about as decent as the other ones. And like those, it does a good job of tailoring its gameplay to the world of Monsters Inc. and its characters, like the scare minigame and the fact it can play as both Mike and Sully, both of whom have their own abilities, so that's cool. It's also got to be probably the easiest game I've ever played, like ever. There's virtually no challenge at all, to the point that even really young kids shouldn't have much trouble with it. To be honest, I can't think of many reasons why you'd want to play it, unless you're looking for something easy to play with your little kid, or if you're a fan of Monsters Inc. or whatever. Again, it's just a pretty nothing game. It's not bad, but it's not particularly memorable. I think this is another C. Then next we've got, oh boy, it's The Mummy. And I thought this was as bad as it got. Oh, if only I knew. Yeah, this is another one I hated. Honestly, this would have been the worst game I played this year if not for Batman and Robin. Which is a shame, because it does have some good ideas and could be fun sometimes. Like in the early levels when you're just going around shooting mummies and shit. But it doesn't take long to become annoying as fuck. Where you've got the fucking platforming where it feels like you're jumping around on the fucking moon and you can't even grab onto ledges and shit. Then there's the traps what kill you instantly even if you make the barest amount of contact with them. Those stupid fucking river bits and the running bits which are just repeated over and over again. It's just not a fun game to play. It might look and sound good, it's pretty atmospheric, but that's nowhere near enough to save it. I think the only reasons it's better than Batman and Robin is 1, it didn't get too big for its boots and try and be really ambitious and give us shit like fucking clock systems where you can't do levels until a certain time, and the combat was kinda decent, so that might save it from joining Batman and Robin in Independence Day in the wank pit, but just barely. It gets a D-. And then it's, oh no, another gem. Star Wars The Phantom Menace. Yeah, it was a fucking menace, alright. This was one I really wanted to take a look at because I remembered it from when I was a kid. And I remember liking it quite a lot. And yeah, I must have been playing something completely fucking different. Or this is like a fucking Mandela effect thing where I've just slipped into another universe without realizing it. Because this was fucking terrible. This was another game that I just absolutely hated. And I actually got quite a bit of pushback on that. Not on YouTube, but while I was making the video, I actually posted on Reddit, yeah, asking people if they remembered it being this bad. And a lot was saying, oh no, this game's a classic. I had so much fun with it going around Mos Eisley and murdering all the kids. But that made me think, yeah, this game might be fun when you're just fucking around and not taking it seriously, but when you're playing properly, then it's nowhere near as fun. Or at all, really. It's slow and clunky, the combat's shit since most of the time the enemies just completely overwhelm you and drop your health before you've got a chance of doing a thing, so you just end up running past most of them. The top-down camera means you can barely see what's going on in front of you, the movement and platforming's pretty annoying. You've got that whole stupid-ass Easter egg hunt where you're trying to find the parts to fix the ship on Tatooine. And yeah, like with a few of the other games on this list, I could barely go a minute without saying out loud, I hate this game. And this was another one where I'd be like, it can't be as bad as I'm making it out to be, but then I would go back and give it another chance, but it would be just as bad. I mean, to its credit, it is better than fucking Batman and Robin or The Mummy or GTA, but that's not saying a whole lot. I'll give it a D. And then we've got Tarzan, well, just like in real life. I think I did Tarzan after Star Wars. But anyway, yeah, this is another one where I don't really have a whole lot to say. It was fine, just a fun little platformer based on a Disney movie. It controls well enough, and it's got a nice bit of variety, like with the levels where you're surfing on the tree branches and shit and running away from the elephants. It does get a bit hard and annoying at times, like that stupid bit where you're riding on the elephant and trying to duck under the branches and you've got to time it just right, or when you're fighting the poachers, and the fight with Brian Blessed at the end was a load of shite. But yeah, it was fun enough. Nothing special, but okay. We'll give it a C. And last up, we have Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories, which I'm kinda happy we're looking at last, cause this is a funny one. So this is another one that I couldn't finish, not because of how bad it was, but because it was just too difficult, what with the way the game's set up. Well, like, it doesn't follow the exact rules of Yu-Gi-Oh! And most of the cards have their effects removed because it would have just been too difficult to program. So what happens is, you have this weird fusion summoning mechanic, where if you combine different cards together, you can make new and more powerful cards to defeat your opponents. But the thing is, there's no rhyme or reason to what combines to make what. There's nothing to tell you what works, so you literally just have to try combining cards at random until you find a combo that works. But the computer already knows all the combinations, so all your opponents have to do is just combine a couple cards to make a powerful monster and then destroy you with it. And that's what happens in pretty much every duel until you figure out some combinations of your own, or get some better cards, because the ones you start off with are shit. But the only way to get better cards is by winning duels, so then you've got to grind for ages and ages and ages. Now you can actually also buy cards with star chips or whatever, what you get by winning duels, but you only get a few each time, and the costs for some of the cards are absolutely insane. Like, I think Blue Eyes White Dragon and a bunch of others, not even really powerful ones, cost like one shy of $1 million or something. Oh yeah, you're gonna be playing for a real long time if you want to get some of those. Yeah, this game was just tedious and annoying, and again, it just got to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I mean, unless you've got the sheer patience and willpower to put up with this shit, then the game's practically unplayable. Now, based on my own logic, that should qualify it for an F. But I still don't know if I can give it one, because when you're just doing a normal duel and you've got some idea of what you're doing and what cards make what, it can be pretty fun. I mean, I'd play it again before I do Batman and Robin, so yeah, I think I'll be kind and give it a D-. And there you go, another tier list done. Didn't really grade as many games as highly as I did last time, because I guess I just didn't look at as many good games last year. Who knows, maybe that'll change this year. And yeah, that's that. Thank you very much for watching the video, hope you enjoyed. If you did, then leave a like. If you didn't, or don't agree with my grades, then tell me to go fuck myself. And if you've made it this far and haven't subscribed, I would greatly appreciate it if you would do so. And as always, thank you so much to everyone who has. Once again, I hope you all had a great Christmas and New Year's, and I'll see you again soon. We're Sarth. Holly.